Welcome to the Forge Truth Podcast, where we are building great men as God defines greatness. Forge is a movement of men with a mission to help all men realize they're the deeply beloved, redeemed sons of the Most High God. I'm your producer, Zach, and I'm here to discuss the issues that affect men the most with our two hosts, Dr. Pete Alwinson, lifelong pastor and leader of Forge, and Jayson Quiñones, Bishop of Core Faith Church in Oviedo, Florida. Men, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here.
Good to be back.
Is it arm day again today?
No.
Joey said that last time. He said, "Is it arm day?" Arm day every day, right?
Yeah, right now. Yes, that was the most flattering thing a man has ever said to me.
Oh man,
yeah,
you're ready to go.
I'm good for a month.
That's it.
Encouragement.
That's it.
He can live off that
I feel
one.
great about myself.
Well, we do have a guest at the Forge HQ right now. Pete, why don't you introduce them?
Yeah, it's great to have Jeff Shills with us
Thank
today.
you very much.
SHILLS,
Yes,
just
sir.
like it sounds.
Yes,
That's
sir.
pretty easy.
Yes, sir. Very easy. Yep.
And
Grateful to be here.
you're from South Florida. What do you consider where you're from, South Florida?
Well, I'm from Lakeland, but I lived in Delray Beach, just north of Boca South of West Palm for about 10 years.
Yeah. Jeff, it is so good to have you here. Tell us about your ministry, then we want to learn more about you and what you do. But tell us about your ministry.
Awesome.
What do you do?
Awesome. Well, first I'll say, Jayson, at least it's not like most guys that tell me, hey, when are you going to start working out? I mean, I'm 45 years old, so you should feel good, man. You should feel good. So, but no, I'm stuck in a 10th grade body. I think I stopped growing when I was in 10th grade. So
Not at all.
But my name is Jeff Shills. I'm the Florida director of Idols Aside Ministries. Idols Aside Ministries exists to see fatherless, so young men and young ladies between the ages of middle school and high school come to know God as their heavenly Father. Ministry started in 2009. We use the outdoors and sports as a tool to introduce them to God. We have a ranch in Lake Wales, which is southeast Polk County. It's about 100 acres. It's a hunting and fishing lodge that we love taking them out there. And then we also have a lodge in northwest Kentucky, which is about 2 hours to the 2 hours to the west of Nashville. It's in a place called Paducah, Kentucky as well. And so we have two ranches that are up and running. We reach about 700 kids without dads a year. And so without dads is also non-active fathers. We have a lot of single moms that call us that maybe have a husband that travels or a husband that's just not connected and not really wanting to be the man of the house and to pour into the son or daughter. And so it's an honor. It's an honor. My favorite thing to do is to be a father. And so I get to be a father to hundreds, which is unbelievable.
Isn't that incredible? You've been married to who and for how long?
So my wife, Molly, both of us graduated from the University of Florida. I saw your Florida State tag. Right now we're licking wounds, but both graduated from the University of Florida. And we have four children, Cameron and Tucker, who is a freshman in high school, and a seventh grader in middle school, and then Lillian, who's in third grade, 8 years old, and then a daughter that's 17 months old, Hannah.
17 months old.
Yeah.
You got a gap there. That's awesome.
It's a little bit of a surprise. I've had a lot of guys say, "Hey, you know where babies come from, right?" So we do. Yeah, we do. So
that's great. Well, you're a father of your own four,
yes, sir.
and then you've got all these other young men and women that are in your ministry,
yes,
though, too.
Yes, sir.
Young girls.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
that is fantastic. Two sites, Kentucky and Florida,
yes, sir,
are really the big and influencing all of those kids. Well, how do you reach them? And then, how do you get into their lives? How do you connect with them?
Yeah, good question. So when the ministry first started in 2009, we worked a lot with group homes, like whether it be foster care or even families that had adopted children. And then we worked, if you're familiar with the Florida Baptist Children's Home, that's now One More Child. It was a big organization that we worked with, and we just got a lot of kids through the foster care system. And then, over time, single moms, no single moms, and then the floodgates just open. And it's not out of the norm for me to get a call during the week from a single mom that maybe I've been ministering to their son or daughter for a while, and they say, "Hey, Jeff, I'm sorry, I don't mean to catch you off guard, but I got another mom on the phone with me right now. I wanted to introduce her to you, and so you can meet her son." And so that happens quite a bit. Over the years, it's now developed where we have a little bit of a social media following. So now, I can pull up, Instagram or TikTok or Facebook and go to the messages, and you're getting a lot of moms that are, "Hey, what areas are you guys in?" So we're getting a lot that way. In 2021, on the backside of COVID, God made it just apparent that school campuses was going to be really the I don't want to say the next mission field, but the focus mission field of getting young men and young ladies. And so now I'd say probably 75 to 80% of our kids come through the local school system, working directly with superintendents, principals, assistant principals, a lot of mental health facilitators, school counselors, success coaches. And so a lot of kids are coming that direction now. So,
Wow.
wow.
So how did you get involved in this ministry?
Yeah.
So this, I'm gonna keep it short. So
No, you don't have to keep it short. Give us some nice details. We want to know, man.
So I left Polk County, and y'all may not know a lot about Polk County, but Polk County is kind of known to be a little bit more backwoods back in the day. It used to be about 400,000 people when I was growing up. Now it's about 850,000. So it's growing like crazy. But when God called me out of Polk County, I was like, yes, big fish in a small pond. God has opened up the door, and he brought me down to South Florida. And actually, I was a best man or a groom in one of my best friend from high school's wedding, and he was marrying into a large produce family in South Florida. And at that wedding, the owner of the company came up to me. He's like, what are you doing in Polk County, and why are you not down here, working for us? And so produce was never on my radar, and so that was the next place that I felt like God brought me to, and brought my girlfriend at the time. She came with me. She was a school teacher, and we got married down there. And I spent 10 years in the produce industry. And I was explaining to a man today at the Forge meeting that family, I mean, for really no fault of theirs, really my fault, that family almost became more important than my family. I mean, I was at my desk at 5:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. Saturday morning, Sunday before church, I was, sending production reports for 3.5, 4 hours. I'd have 25, 26 missed calls after church. And my dad, that I don't know well, that left when I was 4 years old, instilled a workaholism in me and my brother. And so, we do everything 110%, for a long period of time to pat ourselves on the back. And so, I was good at what I did in the produce industry. I had 9 guys that worked underneath me. And one day my wife and I went to the park, and, she's off with my 2 boys playing, and I'm over answering emails. And that night I was like, hey, we should pray about having a daughter. And my wife looked at me and she was like, I don't want to have a third child. She was like, you are a provider, but she's like, you're not really here for the boys and for me outside of just providing. And man, that was that was a gut punch, because I really felt like I was doing what God had called me to do. So from that point on, I really began to pray like, Lord, show me what you want me to do, because obviously I'm not doing the main thing that you want me to do, which is providing for my wife and my kids in a spiritual way. And so after a couple months of prayer, I could just tell the doors were starting to shut here. We went home for Thanksgiving, and I told my wife jokingly, I said, if you want to look at a house back home in Lakeland, I said, we will. I was sort of kind of joking. I thought maybe we would buy a house and I would travel back and forth. Yeah. And she literally, in that 3-hour drive, had 3 houses for us to look at. And we looked at one house, and it's a whirlwind. We put an offer that day on it. And now I'm driving back down to South Florida by myself on a Sunday evening to be back at work on Monday morning. I'm like, Lord, what is going on? And I just felt the Lord just kind of tell me that's a closed chapter. And so when I got back to Lakeland, I'm like, Lord, what am I supposed to do? And so I was still in the produce industry, because that's how I knew how to produce for my family. But I reached out to Mark, who had founded the ministry. And I said, Mark, I feel like my identity has kind of been stripped, but I'm very at peace that God had brought me back here. I said, man, I want to come and serve with you. My mom has kept me in touch with Idols Aside. I said, but like my dad left when I was 4. I have a great stepfather. I don't really have a heart for Fatherless. I said, I really have a heart to see men become the men that God created them to be. And he said, Jeff, just come out to the ranch and just see what God does. And so the first retreat I was at, I tell everybody this, there was 4 boys from a group home. 2 of them had been in the foster care system for 7 years. There was one specific boy that was 14 named Gio. And this kid was a mess. He had just gotten in trouble with robbing a liquor store. He was hanging out with some gangbangers, and we're around the fire, and I'm feeling good. My first night at the ranch, I'm like, okay, now I see why God has me here. I'm like, Gio, what were you thinking? And he looked me right in the eye, a 14-year-old looking me, 36-year-old in the eye, and said, Mr. Jeff, if my mom would have been hanging out with plumbers or electricians, he said, I would have been a plumber or electrician. But he said, my mom is a drug dealer and a prostitute, and she hangs out with gangbangers, and that's all I know. And so I pulled out of that ranch at 6 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. And I'm sure y'all have witnessed this. I had to pull over on Highway 60 because I started weeping. I just said, Lord, this kid's screwed. And I said, how is he supposed to understand what it means to respect a woman? How is he supposed to be a husband one day, a father one day? How is he supposed to graduate high school? How is he going to know who you are? And I felt like the Lord speak to my heart that you're going to be a part of that. So I just thought it was more volunteering. And so I just started to volunteer more. And little did I know, my partner, Mark, would say, hey, we feel like God is calling you and Molly, to ministry. Would you move to Kentucky with us? And I was like, Kentucky.
Yeah. We just got back to Polk County.
Yeah, we just got back to Polk County. And so God made it obvious to both of our families that I was going to take over Florida because God was calling Mark and Becky to launch a second Idols Aside. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
Boy, that's a good way to get into it. And, your story is similar to all of us around the table. We all have earthly father stories too.
Sir, yeah.
But it shows the importance of the home. Right?
Goodness.
The absolute cruciality of the home in developing boys and girls for the next generation.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's what you're doing. Now, Idols Aside, that's an interesting name. How did that become the name for this?
Yeah, so Mark Wright, the founder of Idols Aside Ministry, I was sharing, played football at Appalachian State. And although that team was led by a very godly coach at the time, and Franklin Graham was the chaplain, would come in. I mean, faith was really the foundation. He said that when he ran out of that tunnel, he just could not believe at the amount of people that were worshiping football and worshiping the players.
Yeah.
And so when God called him out of the secular world, about 18 years ago, God made it very apparent that that Fatherless was going to be the name because Mark also grew up without a father, but that it was going to have to do with putting idols aside. And really with a lot of the boys that we work with, there's a lot of complacency, a lot of laziness, but there's just so many idols and just the influencers and people that they put on the pedestal. And so our goal is to get the Heavenly Father back on the pedestal. And so, and then outside of that, where Moses said, who do I say sent me? And God said, I am. And so it's kind of a neat play on that as well. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a question. I was watching the video. I think, I don't know if you were sitting on a porch or something like that and kind of talking about, adopting a school and just kind of sharing a vision of what you do. So could you maybe unpack that for us a little bit so that way our guys and even churches can see how we can get involved and actually support and not just applaud you, but partner with you, because I'm assuming that you would want as many churches involved and doing what you guys are doing. I mean, I was listening on the way here today, preparing for the podcast, and listening to the other guy. I guess is Mark.
Yes, sir. Mark Wright.
I don't know if that's his wife he's talking to or the
Becky.
lady. Yeah,
yes, sir.
But man, if I wasn't driving, I would have probably been crying in some of the stories. That was just really cool. So anyway, man, kind of share with us.
Yeah. So we have one goal, and that's to see God raise an army up to fight for the fatherless. It's not about growing Idols Aside or making the Idols Aside name famous, or Mark or Becky or Jeff or Joel. That's not the goal. The goal is just to make Jesus famous and to see him raise an army up to fight for the fatherless. And so Idols Aside is not a youth ministry. It's a church ministry. And so in James 1:27, James says that pure and undefiled religion is to reach the fatherless, the widows, and the orphans. And so we want to see the church just explode for a heart for fatherless youth. And, that may be churches hiring a single mom / fatherless pastor who the goal is to engage with that demographic, because, 9.9 out of 10 of the single moms and kids that we work with are not typically churched moms or church kids, or they've come through and just not been welcomed and not been loved. I mean, I had a single mom that came to church one morning. She sent me a picture at 7 a.m. I don't know what to wear. She had her whole wardrobe on the bed. And I said, come to church. You're going to be judged because the church is full of a bunch of sinners. I said, but you're going to be loved and you're going to be showing compassion and kindness and whatnot. And so that's what we want to see. We want to see women meeting the needs of single moms. We want to see men meeting the needs of fatherless. And so going back, Jayson, to what you said about the schools has become a pathway for us to be able to reach these kids because they're not churched kids. And so, you can meet them at a ball field, you can meet them, whether, you're going out by the pond and fishing and whatnot, but a lot of these kids are closed up and spending a majority of their time in their room, eating dinner in their room, on their bed, on social media, on video games. My gosh, we could go into a ton of stories of the amount of time that kids are spending behind the screen, but the school became a place that became a feeder zone for us. And so, our goal is to see the church kind of adopt that model to get into schools. And so, what I try to do is I try to build discipleship groups of men that want to go into school. So if school A calls me and says, hey, we want you to begin to meet boys over here, before I take that school on, I want to have 2 or 3 men that are going to be able to go in with me. And so sometimes we may start every other week. Our goal is to go to a weekly meeting, a discipleship group with them. And I want to be able to have 3 or 4 men where if I get sick, we're not going in and telling those boys that we're going to be here every week, and then we're not there. I want to be able to have a group of men. Yeah, and we're asking these boys to sign a covenant, and part of our covenant that we're signing is that we're going to be consistent to being there every single week. And so that's our goal. So there is, just under 40 middle school, high schools in the Polk County area and growing. And so we would like to see a group of men start discipling boys in 6th grade and hand them off 3 years later to a group of men that would pick them up in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th and be able to disciple them for 7 years. And so in the midst of that, like at the Forge this morning, you have over 20 churches. We want to connect with Jesus-focused, Bible-centered churches that are going to go into those schools, disciple those boys on a consistent basis. And then we'd like to see those moms begin to be reached by those churches and those kids be, I don't want to say absorbed by the church, but to become members and active in those churches. Because
now, when do you guys go in to do the Bible studies? At lunch or when?
So from 8:55, and my schedule is from 8:55 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon. The majority are around the lunch schedule, but we ask principals for about 40 minutes. So if we get 25 minutes of lunch, we try to get 20 minutes of class. And so I'll have a lot of principals and teachers that'll push back. And we tell them, we're not tutors. Like, we're not coming in and teaching reading and math.
Right.
We're coming in going after the heart. And I ask teachers, just give us a 9 weeks. Like as God begins to move in their heart, you're going to naturally see their grades, come up, because they're going to want to be there. And one of the commitments that we ask the boys is that if you're missing 5th period, don't say you're committed to the group if you got an F or a D. Yeah. If you got an A, B, or C, then you're committed to the group, because then you can miss, once a week. And so that's the commitment that we ask from those boys.
In essence, in discipling them, you're fathering them, you're parenting them.
Yeah.
You are doing what they're not getting.
Yes, sir.
You're loving them.
Yes,
you're
sir.
giving them time. You're calling them to some concrete lifestyle changes.
Yes, sir.
You're training them.
Yes, sir.
And that's so cool. That is, but now you have to get permission to get into a school.
Yes, sir.
In particular. So that's where it starts, right? You have to go and connect with the principal or the above that.
Yeah. I think a lot of times the door is open by a teacher who maybe emails the principal and says, hey, principal so-and-so, we want you to connect with this group. They're doing amazing things for young men and young ladies. But my heart is that if we're going to really see the growth, the extended growth of every middle school and high school, whether it be in Seminole or Lake or Orange County, I think you have to pray that God will open up a door for that meeting between that superintendent. The way that I always kind of show it is the superintendent is kind of like the governor, and then the schools have the mayors. And so, and I've had the superintendent email, a principal for, and the principal still drag their feet to get in a meeting. And so sometimes I kind of say, God, it's your timing. Maybe God's protecting me from something. And I've kind of stayed back on a school, and I've seen a principal that was moved out of that school, and a godly principal was moved in, and then the door opens up. And so I don't want to force, we don't want to force our way. We want God to move, but it started with a lot of prayer at the beginning. Yeah. Definitely.
So you work through the superintendent. You don't go directly to the school. So you're going through like for that particular county.
Yeah, it started with the schools, because at the time when we started with the schools, Polk County had a superintendent that was on the way out, and they were bringing in a new superintendent. So my thinking is why am I going to go build this relationship? Let's go ahead and start here. And that's kind of how it started in 2021. But then when the new superintendent came in, normally superintendents are there for a while, and I just started to pray, Lord, give us an opportunity to meet. I'd shared this with Peter. The first time we met with that superintendent, he was very like, hey, we got plenty of clubs. We got, different Christian organizations. There's atheist groups that want to be on campus. Why? To this year, which was our 3rd meeting, he came out from behind the desk with his notepad, and he said, I just want to applaud you that you're in these schools, which would be high on my radar. Here's a couple other schools I want you to pray about. But he said, also, what can I do? What kind of doors can I help you open? I mean, he connected me with men in an area that I'm having trouble to get men. And so it's just been kind of neat to see God kind of build that relationship too. But that was, a lot of prayer. A lot.
So that could be sort of a visionary thing for us as Forge men in the Orange County, Seminole County area, Lake County areas to begin to think of the local schools, middle schools and high schools as a mission field and taking time to go in there. And if a guy's going to go disciple a group of boys at lunch, middle school guys at lunch, he's got to take some time off to do that 1 day a week at least, right?
It's a big ask.
Yeah.
It's definitely a sacrifice. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I think more and more men, we need the big ask.
Yeah.
Do it. I mean, what better sacrifice can you make? Take a lunch off and go do that.
Yes, sir.
And pour into these young men. How do you form a group? In other words, how do you get started? I mean, or do you have to have a one young man that says, hey, I want a group?
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, I think a lot of times, when we talk in stewardship, we want to be a good steward of our time. And so a lot of times if one counselor reached out and had one kid, your heart right away wants to be out, well, hey, we needed to be 4 or 5 kids before it makes sense of our time. And so I've tried to avoid that if a counselor has a kid at a school that we're maybe not, I really want to begin to say, all right, Lord, is this a new door that you're opening, or is this maybe just a relationship of a single mom and a kid that we can begin to kind of sow outside the school and bring to some of our retreats at our ranch and whatnot. And maybe it's going to build there. And then, Lord, you show me. And then sometimes God right away is like, no, this is where you're going. And the next day I'll get another email from another counselor or whatnot, which is pretty cool. And so we've started on campus. Like we have a school in Lakeland that we started with 2 boys. We're meeting on 2 days now with a total of 19 boys.
Wow.
And so that was just starting with 2. And the cool part is that those 2 boys I had known for 2 or 3 years prior. And then when I met with the principal, I said, hey, would you mind if I come and meet with these 2 boys? He said, yeah, come meet with them. And then I started kind of going in, meeting the counselors, meeting the mental health facilitators, the success coaches, say, hey, we're here for y'all. Like, yeah, we love the students and we want to pour into the students. But my prayer is that we're, helping y'all avoid some issues so you can be a little bit more proactive than reactive. And so, the school boards, I think, love hearing that because a lot of times there's so many kids in schools nowadays. I mean, my middle school had 650 kids. They have 1,100 now. It can become very reactive now because of the amount of people that are flooding in this area. And I pray that our program is a proactive program that's helping kids know who they are and where their identity should be found at, 11, 12 years old, all the way up.
Wow. And that's a thought. People are still flooding to Florida.
Yes, sir.
1,000 people a day, they say, come into the Central Florida area.
Yes, sir.
And so that is overloading the schools.
100%.
So they become more reactive than proactive
Yeah.
in developing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. We have a good relationship with Sheriff Grady Judd. And
he's famous.
Yeah, he's a great man. I grew up with his sons and spent a lot of time in his house. And, I told Sheriff Grady last time we were with him, I said, my prayer is that, what our ministry is doing, your sheriff department is going to feel the effects of it, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, because the stats and statistics are going to tell you that a kid without a father, the suicide rate, the incarceration rate, the teen pregnancy rate, all those rates are going to be, 5, 10, 15, 20 times the national average. And so our heart is that, we're going to reach those early and take some pressure off of him as well.
Wow. Yeah. Bishop was one of those guys in the you were a gangbanger. You did your fair share.
Yeah.
God got you out of that.
He did. He delivered me.
Amen.
And with the emptiness that the lack of a father leaves, I know 100% how important this ministry is. I always tell people about my Royal Ranger Commander Bill, and I remember coming back from a powwow with him and just saying, "Man, why can't you be my dad?" Just because of this wound that was there. And he made such an impact just by loving me. He didn't do anything special. I don't remember anything. He was just there and just his presence. So that ministry of just presence, just being there was such a big deal. So this is absolutely amazing.
It's
what you guys are doing.
It's super gospel, right?
And it's funny because a lot of people would think that, we always feel as Christians a lot of times like we're not needed and like people are going to be opposed to it, and there will be some opposition for sure.
Of course.
But man, when they start to see the impact, when they start to see the fruit of ministry like this, then their hearts are changed. And so that to me is just a testament of how important this ministry is, to the school. So yeah, man, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about these retreats that you guys do?
Yeah. So we have a ranch in Lake Wales. We own 100 acres, and we have a ranch west of Nashville that's also 110 acres. And so, I was a big fisherman growing up. My partner, Mark, did a lot of hunting. And so we just always believed that being in God's creation just spoke to you, and God spoke in a different way. I mean, it's one thing to be consistent on campus, but the bottom line is kids are coming from fourth period and going to sixth period after you meet with them. It's another thing to bring them out to a ranch that, blows them. It's a Bass Pro Shop. God has done a great job out there. We grab their phones, we put them in the safe, they're unplugged for the weekend. But God just speaks. It's, you're in a stand. We hunt and we fish out there, and you're in a stand and the sun's coming up, and we can bring our Bible and read out of Genesis 1 that God spoke this into creation. And then Genesis 1:27 that he created you in his image. And so you got a deer walking across the field, and you're telling a kid who's never seen that in person, you're telling him, but he created you in his image to be in relationship. And so it's just impactful. Life is, a guy at our table today said, faith is one step at a time. And I agree with that. But life is so much about experiences. And so, Pete, when we come to your campus and we say we're going to be men of our word, and the walls start to come down, you start to listen, but then you come out to the ranch and your mind is blown with this amazing God who created the turkey and the deer and the pigs. And, we have kids that come over there that have never baited a hook before, and they're going to catch their first fish. They may harvest their first deer. We teach them how we skin it out. We quarter the meat there. The kid is literally taking home potentially 40 to 50 pounds of meat to feed his family.
Wow.
And at the beginning of their retreat, he wouldn't even hardly look you in the eye because of the confidence level. It's just amazing how God speaks to the outdoors. So from September to May, we're at our ranch 3 weekends a month. So we do about 26 to 28 of those a year in Lake Wales, and about 26 to 28 of those also in Kentucky. And then we have partner properties. We're bringing a group to a partner in Texas this year, right outside of Dallas. This ranch that we want you to bring 4 kids and 4 of their moms. And we're bringing 2 kids from Florida and 2 kids from Kentucky with their moms. And we're going to sow into the moms. We're going to sow into the kids.
And that could be a new site for you all. Get into Texas, maybe.
We have some partners and people that have asked us about 3 or 4 different areas, and we just want to be cognizant of what God wants to do. It may not be Idols Aside going there. It may be there's 3 or 4 churches that are going to utilize this site and be able to grow. So we want to do what God wants to do. We don't want to put a thumbprint on it. It takes a lot, as you all know, to raise somebody up. So if Idols Aside was to have a branch in Texas, God has to raise a family up to be able to start that over there. And so we're just going to leave it in his hands. We do know that he wants to reach Fatherless all over the world. We do know that. And so, we're getting calls from churches in Colorado, churches in South Carolina. We got a mom that called us from Vegas that saw our Instagram page. She was out in Vegas. She said, "Do you have one in Nevada?" And we said, "No, it's Kentucky and Florida." She said, "I would be willing to move my son to Kentucky or Florida to be a part of an organization that would pour into him and sow into him." So that's just unbelievable that God would make that type of connection and hunger.
It is so cool how you're equipping them and exposing them to things. I remember speaking one time someplace, and I think it was St. Louis, and a guy said, "I work at a VOTEC school with kids, young kids that had never even been taught by their dad how to use a screwdriver. They just didn't know."
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is giving basic life experiences and skills and connecting them relationally, opening up their world, broadening their world.
Yes.
What an exciting ministry.
Yeah, very cool.
And so needed, so important.
Amen.
Flows totally with what we are about at Forge. And we got to go after the fatherless.
Amen. That's the call.
That is great. Wow.
That's the call.
That is great.
Well, very cool stuff. We want to thank you for coming. It's our time to end the episode, but it was great to have you in the studio with us.
Thank you, Zach.
If you want to learn more about Idols Aside and the ministry that they're doing, we'll have a link in the show notes. You can also email us any questions or comments you have about the show today at forgetruth.com. And Jayson is going to leave a challenge for our men today.
Yeah, I would say, guys, don't ever underestimate the need that there is in the hearts of young men and young women for dads, and don't underestimate how God could use you, even though you may not be a biological father, you may not be related to them in any way, but God can use you to minister to them. And so just be sensitive to how the Lord may want to use you to minister to those who are hurting that you may not even know that they're hurting.